welcome back to this installment of the Wrestling Minute, brought to you by Sizesports and Carnage Media. I am your host, Kev Nevick, and today it's time to break down the Royal Rumble 2024. Now that it's all been able to settle for a couple of days now, let's talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and a little bit about where we'll be going forward from here now that we've also sat through the Raw after Rumble. Although, just to be clear, we'll talk about more of that Raw stuff in a future episode. The focus tonight will be the Royal Rumble. Now let's start with what we liked, shall we? That's always a good place. The sports-based presentation, bro. Look, I have no reason for doing a Vince Russo voice in that sentence. I just felt like it, so please bear with me. I enjoy the sports-based presentation. I think when we talk about Raw, we're going to end up talking about this even more because they started to do that with the walk-ups to the arena, having, the little highlight outro slides that you see in NFL and NBA games. They had someone on Twitter actually put together a clip of all of them. It showed McIntyre, Cody Rhodes, all those things. So it'll have, the wrestler's logo slide across the screen, and then at one point it'll have one highlight of them doing their finisher or something, and then boom, bumper out into the ad break. And I love that. I think that's a very good choice as it pertains to our Rumble. The running count that would show up occasionally in the top left of your screen, where it would show the 3 longest lasting wrestlers in each Rumble match and showed their time. I thought that was a very nice touch, even though I did not want them to break any endurance records. So now would be a good time for me to mention, if you would like, you can check out our Royal Rumble preview so you can confirm these things for yourself, see what we talked about, what we were worried about, how we thought these things would pan out. Although, spoiler alert, we called it. I mean, down to everything, even down to this freaking endurance record that Bayley set that I didn't necessarily want that to happen. But I will say this as we start to dive into the card itself. The Women's Royal Rumble started it off. I have been a naysayer in the past about this. I think it's weird to have 2 Royal Rumbles in the same night. It's a very once a year match, in my opinion, and I still think there is a way in the future potentially for the WWE to benefit from splitting those 2 events. This is why you have a 4-card pay-per-view, because you have 2 Rumble matches, and they are so, I don't want to call them overbooked, because I don't necessarily believe they were overbooked, but they have a lot going on. They're hour-plus long matches. Maybe split them up. Now, I say all of that to say, because I kind of tricked you there, the Women's Royal Rumble was the best part of this event to me, if I look at it strictly on each match and its own entertainment value. Now, personally, despite what memes I may make about The Rock not letting Cody finish his story, I'm a big fan, was raised by Dusty Rhodes fans, okay? So a huge Cody fan here, big mark for that guy. So while I may have been happier at what to some might have been an easy to call Men's Royal Rumble, I thought the injury to Seth Rollins and The Rock being in the mix kind of did throw it all up in the air a little bit. We weren't certain. We still bet on Cody. But the Women's Rumble, just top to bottom, without any horse in the race, so to speak, I thought it was the better booked of the 2 matches. This is where we got all of our special guests, and I don't even necessarily want to say callbacks. We didn't have many returning superstars, any legends or anything like that, which makes sense. Most of them are working at AEW right now or just got fired, so they're not going to be back anytime soon. So it made sense that there would be a lot. Now let's run through the list. So we had Naomi return, Jordan Grace, the TNA Women's Champion, Jade Cargill, Tiffany Stratton, Liv Morgan. And these are all just women that either came back or to some extent debuted. I mean, Jade, I think that was her actual in-ring debut completely. Tiffany Stratton's former NXT champion. A lot of people are high on her. I haven't seen much personally. I am going to start watching more NXT for this program. So you have that to look forward to, especially by the time we get geared up. When the Wrestling Minute becomes paired with the Wrestling Hour, we are really going to be diving more into some NXT content. So look out there. We're going to be talking about several NXT folks in this episode because there was another one in that main event that had a pretty good showing as well, if I say so myself. But this is about the Women's Rumble. I think it was the right decision to have Bayley win. I thought the ending of this Rumble was a little better. Again, I have to exclude the fact, because I'm very biased here. I am also a fan of Punk. And so to see, and it was just a nostalgia hit for me as well. So to see Punk and Cody Rhodes be the final two, that was exactly what I wanted. But I think we all kind of assumed that's how it would end. So as far as a one-on-one, what they did was great, especially considering that Punk was hurt. But I thought that the very quick going from the final three to boom, boom, it's done, and now Bayley's the winner is what it was. Liv eliminated, was it Jade Cargill? And then very quickly, Bayley slides out of the way of harm. Maybe it was beyond. I can't remember who the third one was, but it was a great finish there. They're all on the apron. And Bayley, being Bayley, she sneaks back into the ring and is able to kick Liv Morgan out. So two quick eliminations to end it. I thought that was phenomenal. I'm just going to reiterate what I said before for those who didn't catch the last episode, and I don't blame you if you don't necessarily want to go back. I understand they're very record happy right now, and especially considering all the other stuff that's going on with Vince McMahon and other former superstars that didn't make it to the Rumble. I can maybe understand them wanting to kind of thicken up the modern day record books, put a little padding between them and those glory years of the Attitude Era, now that not many people will look back on a lot of that fondly. I get it. But for the love of God, please, can we have... Now I want 2 years. I only wanted one to start, but you had to go back to back. That's now 3 out of the last 4 Rumbles where an endurance record has been set. And technically, who was it that started with Rhea number 1? Didn't both women in the last Rumble... Didn't 1 and 2 both go the distance? So technically, that's a tie. So that's 4. 4 people have set endurance records in the last 4 Royal Rumbles. Can we chill out with the endurance records for a minute? I groaned as soon as I saw Bayley come in at 3 because I definitely felt that Bayley was going to be the one to win it. And I was like, oh, not again. Not that she doesn't deserve it. She absolutely does. But this is why they shouldn't have had both endurance records set last time. Gunther didn't necessarily need it, especially with the way he's been booked since. I mean, it was a great performance. I don't know. Maybe I'm splitting. I feel like I'm splitting hairs here the more I go down this rabbit hole. So I'll just get off it. All right. I will spare you my inner turmoil on this topic, but let's get away from those endurance records going forward. It can't all be positive, right? We can't just sit here and say, everything was perfect, guys. But it was great. I liked the Women's Royal Rumble overall. Thought Naomi put on a good performance. Jade Cargill still looks a little green, but the women's division in the WWE, I don't. It feels almost goofy to say, well, it's the best it's ever been. Well, no shit. When you think about how long it was just Moolah and Co. And like, there's never been this many fans into the women's side of the sport. It's no longer booked like the divas were in the 90s. These women are actually treated like athletes, and some of them are stronger than everyone talking and most of the folks listening probably. There's some real amazing athletes in the division outside of just you got the championship folks. You got Rhea, you got Charlotte when she comes back, you've got Becky Lynch, you've got all of Damage Control, of which I think, the only one I don't really know much about is Dakota Kai, because she's been hurt the entire time that I've really been watching. So I don't know what we have there. But the rest of Damage Control, I think it's a great group. It's just the division is so strong. I'm not a huge Nia Jax fan, but I can understand she's probably not going anywhere. But then again, just to read those names, Naomi, Jade Cargill, Liv Morgan, Tiffany Stratton's thought to be coming up full-time soon. Lots of folks were impressed by Jordan Grace. Now, that's an interesting one to me because she is top dog over at TNA. I don't know of any other women that might regularly be given the belt over her. I feel like she could be TNA's most historically dominant woman champion, whatever, or she can come to the WWE and be one of the girls, because I have a feeling Jordan Grace gets here and they'll treat her like Ivy Nile, which isn't a knock against Ivy Nile, but Jordan Grace isn't going to come in and be put right into the title picture, I don't think. I mean, at least historically, that's not how they do it. It is a new era. It's a new regime. Perhaps Triple H will treat other wrestling organizations with more respect when it concerns bringing wrestlers over. Like, maybe they will no longer pretend like these other federations don't exist, and so that way they can actually acknowledge. So, for instance, especially if it's TNA, it's probably only going to be TNA and New Japan. I don't think they're ever going to play nice with AEW, but the ones that they know that they're not directly competing with, I think we could see that. So you may be wondering, Kev, why are we spending 10 minutes talking about the Women's Rumble? And that's because we're not going to spend hardly any time talking about these next two matches. What do I have to say about a fatal four-way Roman Reigns title defense that ended exactly how we all thought it would end, even probably down to Solo coming out in a hoodie? Now, funnily enough, and this is one of the reasons I like to wait a day or two to let things simmer before I give you our review, Solo Sikoa has deactivated his Twitter. He's been having a hard time. I saw him go on a mass blocking spree. He blocked a tweet as simple as someone saying, "This dude Solo needs to stop coming out with his hood up. We all know it's you." And like, he's blocking people for that. Like, that. Come on, man. Like, you gotta have thicker skin than that. But apparently also people went and found his tweets from about 11 years ago, I think, when he was a student and he really hated math. So poor Solo, I just deactivated his Twitter. He's been given a hard time. It's not his booking decision. So I also, maybe there were some more hateful tweets that I missed, but the ones that I saw him blocking people for, I was kind of like, yeah, you really should just deactivate your Twitter, because you're not acting like the enforcer of the biggest heel group. You're kind of acting like a regular old Rage Andy on Twitter, you can't do that. So Solo Sikoa interferes. He pulls the ref out, which is another one we've seen before. He's about to get the 3 count. Roman Reigns about to get pinned. So we shall see how this plays out with the fatal 4-way possibility. I've heard some rumors after the Rumble. I was going to say some rumblings. There we go. Heard some rumblings after the Rumble that Randy Orton may also be injured. So that would absolutely deviate from the plan that I had laid out in our preview, in which I thought it would be Orton and Reigns for the next one. And AJ Styles and LA Knight spinning off for a feud since they had a little more heat with each other. Seemed like that's kind of the direction they've been leaning us towards. But, the other thing I can't rule out, guys, what is it? It's the end of January now. WrestleMania's in April, February, March. Can we honestly rule out the possibility that Roman Reigns doesn't wrestle again until WrestleMania? I think it's very possible. Let me know what you think. I have heard that he's not booked for Elimination Chamber. And so that only leaves us, one more pay-per-view or PLE between now and WrestleMania in which he would be an option. And at this rate, I press X to doubt on if I believe Roman Reigns will work 2 PLEs in a row. Maybe he will. I hope that he will. And this is another one that's interesting to me, especially in light of those same things we talked about, changing up the history. How soon in the future would the WWE give another wrestler a run like Roman has had? So since he has the belt, there is the chance, there is the chance that he will continue to hold it. I hope he loses it at WrestleMania, but they may just keep it on him until he passes Hogan. So we shall see, but I, for one, am getting bored of this. The Bloodline at one point was the hottest storyline in wrestling. It, to me, has cooled off immensely. The fans want Cody. They've wanted it for over a year now. So the rumblings that I've heard a theory that was shared to me from my buddy Noah, who maybe one day you guys will hear from on this very program. Now, I believe I'm getting this secondhand, so he was telling me someone else's theory, so forgive me if I'm misrepresenting some of this. But essentially the idea would be that Cody would once again lose at this WrestleMania. Roman keeps it for one more year. Cody starts at number 1 at the Rumble. Of course, you know how I feel about that part of it. Sets a new endurance record, probably, because he'll start at 1 and be the first person to win in a three-peat. Now, as Noah pointed out, there has not been a three-peat. The only 3-time Royal Rumble winner is Stone Cold Steve Austin, and there was 1 or 2 years in it. He won back-to-back, and then he didn't. There were 1 or 2 years before he won that third one. So there was some Rumbles in between. So we do have 1 3-time winner, but no back-to-back winners. So now that would be some long-time booking. For me personally, WrestleMania 40 being the one that's right here, it feels like the right moment for them to just go that route and have Cody finally dethrone Roman Reigns. But I guess that's a spoiler alert. Too late. So the final thoughts on the world title match. Yeah, I'm over it. And I think they knew the fans, you've got 4 matches here. Theoretically, the 2 in the middle between the Rumble are kind of a dead spot regardless. But wouldn't you think the most dead spot would be right after that first Rumble? So they put a fatal 4-way: Reigns, Randy Orton, LA Knight, who outside the Bloodline at one point was the hottest act in the business, and then AJ Styles, who's just been a top guy for 20 straight years. No big deal. That's in the death spot at a pay-per-view because they, in my opinion, just have not booked the Bloodline storyline as well as they had previously. They've kind of fallen off, so to speak, in my humble opinion. So we'll see what happens with that. We might not see anything with it other than promos between now and WrestleMania, but let me know if you think that is a bit much on my end. Speaking of a bit much, the U.S. title match was good, not great. This was the only one that I really was uncertain of the outcome. Now, logistically, X's and O's, it made the most sense that it was going to stay on Logan, but again, I hate to keep bringing it up. This is why we're going to have our our full-on Vince McMahon episode so we can just talk about all of that shit in one setting, get it out there, get it over with. But, it continues to come up. It's going to be a factor in some of these things, and I, for one, was curious, due to all of the negative press that surrounds Logan Paul, whether or not TKO and the WWE would maybe course correct. I don't want to say overcorrect, because it might just be the right move, but no, as we found out, Logan's brand name and money drawing ability and just that young fan base that he's got, that's probably has almost certainly brought at least a few new fans over to WWE, this piece of crap, Logan Paul. So he keeps it. I don't mind a DQ finish, and I don't even mind a DQ finish in a pay-per-view, but a DQ finish in a pay-per-view that only has 4 matches is a little weak to me. But the one thing about the DQ finish like that is you have essentially Owens gets to go over without winning. So Logan gets to keep his belt, gets to keep heat, but the real pro wrestler, Kevin Owens, would have won the match if the ref hadn't seen the knuckles, and then afterwards gets to powerbomb Logan Paul through a table. So kind of a win-win. Did you guys see what looked to be a concussed Logan Paul in that quick post-match interview where he said he needed a second? That was rough. If it was anybody else, I'd feel really bad for him. But moving on to the main event of the evening, the Royal Rumble, man. This was a bit of a disappointment, if you ask me, at least until it got to be about the final 6. So we'll run through it really quickly. As I said, most of the big moments as far as new people joining, guest spots, any of that, most of that came from the women. We had Andrade joined this match in the 4 spot, to some fanfare. Give Graves and Michael Cole some credit. They really tried to sell it like this was the biggest, hottest free agent signing of all time. I don't know how much the live audience cared, but it was interesting to see him working against Escobar with that whole Escobar and his group versus the LWO. It kind of feels like they're doing like a luchador variety hour within the show. It's like we'll have all the luchadors work together over here, brother. But I for one, I have enjoyed it just because at least this era recently of WWE, they're doing a bit better with their mid-card storylines. That was dog water for such a long time. Max Dupree. Vince has been bad at the mid-card stuff for 30 years. So it has been nice to see more of these storylines fleshed out. And that was something that was good, again, about both Rumbles and the men's Rumble. I believe that this is one of the reasons why we had fewer guest spots. Again, there's not a ton of in-shape, able-bodied legends that could have joined anyway, but there are a lot of great, maybe not great, but at least quality, good workers. Some of them are great that didn't make this Rumble. There's no Street Profits in this Rumble. Not that the AOP should have been, but there are plenty of guys that you see on the show every week who didn't make the Rumble. So I'm not necessarily upset that we didn't get more geriatric bastards crawling in there to take up a spot. I, for one, would not have popped to see Booker T and his lack of knee cartilage try to hang out in the Rumble for 3 minutes. I thought the Pat McAfee thing was already a waste. And especially when you find out, if you can believe it, I'm going to press exit out on it. McAfee says he wasn't told ahead of time he was going to be in the Rumble, which might explain why the spot was so lame. But you got a guy who wrestled against Adam Cole, I think, on an NXT PLE. And then now all of a sudden he's doing like the Bobby Heenan scared manager thing. It was just weird. You presented this guy as a former athlete who can work a little bit, and then just because that big giant Omos and someone else was in there, he gets all scared and hopped out. Now let's talk about that someone else. Braun Breaker allegedly took Brock Lesnar's spot and did most of Brock Lesnar's damage in the Rumble. I think came in at 18, was a house of fire, cleared out a lot of folks, ended up taking out Omos a few seconds after Pat McAfee ran out of the ring and eliminated himself because Omos was in it. So you had that I am very much looking forward to. But you had the different storylines with McIntyre in there. I was a little disappointed at Sami Zayn being number 30. Excited to have him back. I don't know if I'm as high on Sami as the rest of the WWE universe is. Again, love the work. Just number 30 just didn't quite work for me. I would have popped like crazy for it at like 23 or something like that. But it was just, to me, number 30's got to be big, got to be huge, got to be a real main event title contender. And outside of that Montreal PLE when he was in the midst of his hottest run, I just don't believe that Sami Zayn is a regular main event title threat. So it was just weird having him in at 30. But, Jay having a good long run from the beginning, but not long enough to break any endurance records, fine by me. I'm sure there were some other storylines. I mentioned Lashley and the AOP, so we'll talk about, what's his name, Karrion Kross. The classic got eliminated, and then after he was eliminated, eliminates Bobby Lashley. So that feud will continue. So that's a staple of the Rumble, but I thought it was done pretty well this year as far as integrating all the mid-card storylines throughout. The Women's Royal Rumble had it too, although they may just be ignoring it. I don't know, because they had Natalya turn on Tegan Nox and try to eliminate her, and then they both get eliminated. And then the next night, they're wrestling as a tag team again. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know what's going on there. So the Rumble match in general, I liked it, didn't love it. I am very excited about Braun Breaker. On Monday Night Raw, it sounded like he might be going to SmackDown, which could be good. I don't know who they'll have him feud with first. This is another downside to Roman just hijacking and gatekeeping the titles. Even though, they turned his 2 titles back into 1, it's still, you've got Gunther on the other side who also isn't going to lose, and then you've got Logan Paul. So will it be Braun and Logan Paul? I don't know. What belt would Braun Breaker realistically be going after? I think it'll be a while before we have to worry about that, but should be interesting to see who his first big feud is against. So there we go, folks. Royal Rumble. Lock it in. I'm going to try to get us out of here before we hit that 30-minute mark. Let me know how you felt in a comment below, or hit me up on Twitter at KevNevick or at The Wrestling Men. And until next time, I hope you all take care. We will be back to talk Vince McMahon, to talk Raw, to talk CM Punk's injury, to talk AEW signings. I haven't even checked in on AEW in like a couple of weeks. So my bad. I need to do that. But anyway, until next time, thank you so much for listening. Leave a like if you could. Share with a friend. All that good stuff. And until next time, we will see you. Take care out there.